welcome to this Ultimate Lux guide for Season 13. After looking at the best Pro and Solo queue Lux players, I've put as much info in this guide to help you emulate their playstyle. Let's get straight into it, starting off with abilities and tips for each so you can gain an advantage right now. If you find this guide helpful at any time, let me know by giving it a like. Let's quickly cover her abilities, then I'll show you tips and tricks to give you an advantage. Lux's passive, Illumination, marks enemies with light energy whenever Lux hits Q, E, or R. Her basic attacks and her ultimate consume this mark and deal bonus magic damage. This passive is important for optimal damage, which I'll discuss in combos as well as in the following abilities. Her Q, Light Binding, is a skill shot that deals magic damage and roots up to 2 enemies. Generally, you take E at level 1, but Q is great for invades, so take this if you're going to invade with your team. It will almost guarantee a kill if you land the snare. In lane, use 1 minion in front of you so the enemy feels safe, but since Q has 2 snares, they will get hit by the second. Do it right as the second minion is dying, right after you auto it for even more deception. You won't be able to tell if you hit an enemy with Q in Fog of War or in a brush unless you have Arcane Comet or Summon Aerie up, which will show the animation of the rune traveling to the location. In lane, a nice cheese tactic to land Q easier is appearing in Fog of War right behind the river wall, wait for enemies to walk up to minions, then throw Q. Better chance against melee champs as they need to get closer to auto. Another deceptive trick, great for skill shots in general, is to walk in one direction, then throw it in a different direction. Her W, Prismatic Barrier, is a shield Lux uses on herself and allies after throwing her wand. Lux will always get the shield, but you must hit allies with the wand for them to obtain it. You can stack the first and second shields. This ability is amazing in teamfights when your team is grouped and you can shield multiple teammates. Try to align with your teammates, making sure to hit as many as possible. Late game, you should be spamming this as it's almost always off cooldown. You'll gain a lot of extra gold from assists with this ability, so use it on allies even if they don't urgently need a shield. You can skip leveling this at level 3 if you want more AP from E. Just level W at level 4. Since there is a travel time, if you're running away from an enemy and taking damage, throw the shield in front of you as it will take less time for the wand to return and activate the second part of the shield. Sometimes, if you're in base or whenever one of your teammates is teleporting, just shield them. If they end up fighting, they'll have a shield and you'll pick up some assist gold if they get a kill. Use this in mid or bot lane to freeze the wave next to your tower by tanking minion damage, encouraging jungler ganks and keeping you safe in general. This is great when you are doing epic monsters, for example, you're taking a blue buff by yourself or you're helping do a dragon, your shield will negate a lot of their damage. Her E, Lucent Singularity, sends a large AoE skill shot to the area, slowing all enemies inside. After 5 seconds, or if Lux activates it again, it deals magic damage. It provides vision, so use it over walls, brushes to scout for enemies, or check if they're doing objectives. This is probably one of the best abilities to check for vision in the game, as it lingers for 5 seconds and even shows vision slightly further than its radius. Since it slows and does plenty of AP damage, use it in tight areas, forcing squishy champs to be zoned out or risk running through it and taking serious damage. The slow is especially important when kiting and escaping. If you are being chased, place it in front of the enemy and only activate it once they are right on the edge. The useful slow can be used to land Q and Alt easier. This provides amazing wave clear, so try to hit all minions with 1 E. At around 60 ability haste, which is about 2 items with ability haste, you'll be able to keep E active for its full 5-second duration, and then once it pops, you can instantly activate another one. You can first cast E, start recalling, then activate it, without interrupting your recall. This can be useful for clearing waves while backing. You cannot, however, activate E while you're dead, but it will activate after the 5 seconds. And finally, her ultimate, Final Spark, is a huge AoE long-range beam that damages enemies and briefly reveals the surrounding areas. Its cooldown is refunded by 30 to 50% if an enemy champion dies within 1.5 seconds of taking damage from Final Spark. The thickness is deceiving, so practice hitting enemies just outside the visual edge. A lot of players will think they are out of range. If you use E to slow and then aim R right in the middle of the enemy, they cannot dodge it by walking out even with quick reactions. If you hit a Q binding in lane, sometimes you want to use Final Spark as poke, since once they are snared it's guaranteed damage. This will stop some threatening matchups trying to all-in you, as well as set up your jungler for a kill. In situations where you need to desperately wave clear, using this is fine. The cooldown isn't too bad, especially with some CDR, especially with ability haste, runes, and blue buff. Even though it's a great sniping tool, if you ever have the chance to hit 2 or more enemies in a team fight, position yourself to hit as many enemies as possible for massive AoE damage. Tight areas are perfect, as enemies have no chance to dodge the thick skill shot. Ability order. You want to max E first because it has the largest AoE damage potential, Q second for the increased damage, and then your W shield. Always level R when you can. You could potentially max Q since it has a higher base damage and AP ratio, but it's generally a harder skill shot to hit, and it can only hit 2 champions max, and also if you level it, the cooldown is always going to be 10. W can be max second if you really want a stronger shield for your team, maybe to counter some AoE from the enemy team like Karthus or Brand. Just be aware that you'll lose damage from Q, so make sure you already have a lot of damage on your team. At level 1, if your team decides to invade as already mentioned, take Q for the potential to snare 2 enemies. It's best to level this up right before you use it, otherwise coming to lane with Q isn't optimal. You want to level E first every other time. E is great to counter invades and guarding your entrances, using the vision E provides to keep you and your team safe without needing to use a ward. I'll be covering mid and AP carry bot LUX items in this section. For a full support itemization guide, check out the support section in other roles. Runes. There is one major rune taken on LUX, Arcane Comet, as well as 3 less common but still viable runes, Summon Aerie, Dark Harvest, and First Strike. Arcane Comet fits into LUX's poke mage playstyle. It has great synergy with Q and E, as the CC these provide make Comet easy to land. She's generally building ability haste, so you'll be spamming spells and therefore getting plenty of Arcane Comet procs later on in the game. Your passive also procs Arcane Comet, so keep this in mind. Since we're on Sorcery, Summon Aerie is the next viable rune. It can be better in matchups where you need to constantly auto-harass. You can activate the shield part of Aerie with your W shield, making it a great utility option for your team. It can't be dodged, unlike Arcane Comet. However, Arcane Comet scales better than Aerie, so I would highly suggest you prioritize that in most games. The first keystone is Mana Flow Ring. Try to poke with Q and E in lane whenever you see this off cooldown so you can stack mana. Second keystone is Transcendence. Spamming abilities will be important when it comes to skirmishes and teamfights. Absolute Focus is okay if you're likely going to be above 70% to get the extra AP, but Transcendence is much more reliable with LUX, as you'll be able to spam abilities mid to late. The final keystone is Scorch. Just make sure you are constantly able to poke in lane to make this optimal. Take it when you want to prioritize dominating the lane over scaling for late. Finally, Gathering Storm for the guaranteed AP every 10 minutes. Best taken when you are looking to just play safe and scale, which hasn't been the case in solo queue for a while. You'll be a huge burst threat mid to late. Before we cover second paths, let's briefly cover the domination rune Dark Harvest. Dark Harvest has the potential to do the most damage if you get plenty of stacks. Late game, you'll be able to one-shot combo or snipe squishies with less than 50% HP with your ultimate. It's not as consistent as Arcane Comet early to mid. The first keystone from Domination is Cheap Shot, which will deal some bonus true damage from Q or E. Eyeball Collection will help LUX gain some extra AP from takedowns. You'll actually pick up quite a few if there are plenty of fights, since your W shield picks up assists. The final rune is Ultimate Hunter. It helps further decrease the cooldown of your ultimate when fully stacked, so you can spam it mid to late. First Strike is the finable viable rune worth mentioning. Great scaling, and you can definitely make this viable if you see yourself dominating lane. Try to have some experience on LUX before using this rune. You'll have to hit enemies first, so don't take this against enemies who outrange you. As for second paths, I'll be covering Domination, Inspiration, and Precision, but you can use Sorcery as well if you've picked Dark Harvest or First Strike. Inspiration is the most common second path. In order of priority, Biscuit Delivery can help you sustain in tougher poke matchups. Cosmic Insight is best for the ability haste it provides. Perfect Timing is great for certain matchups or if you plan on building Zhonya's. Magic Footwear will save you 300 gold if you're willing to sacrifice movement speed early, and it provides some extra bonus movement speed. Less favourable key zones but still viable are Minion Dematerializer if you'll need help picking up CS. Future's Mark may help you finish your Lost Chapter to guarantee a solid laning phase, and Time Warp Tonic for clutch heals in close fights or perhaps to bait champs, especially for tower guys. A popular choice from Domination is Cheap Shot for extra damage after Q&E, and Ultimate Hunter for ability haste on Ultimate as already mentioned. Another popular second path is Precision, specifically for Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace. The cooldown reduction from Presence and damage increase from Coup de Grace helps Lux become the ultimate low cooldown sniping machine. If there's a high chance you'll be sniping immobile squishies throughout the game, this will be optimal. Starting items. The most common start is Doran's Ring with 2 HP pots. It provides everything Lux needs until her first buy. Corrupting Potion is another option if you intend on going for hard trades or it's a long range poke matchup. Just make sure you are able to weave in plenty of autos to make use of the burn damage over time this provides. Ideally you want to go back with enough to purchase a Lost Chapter. The mana, ability haste and AP will allow you to spam abilities to poke and wave clear. Some components. In some tough lanes, you want to back early. Refillable Pot and Dark Seal can help you survive lane with extra stats and healing. The Dark Seal can be upgraded to mages later on, or if you start snowballing and predict you can pick up more kills. With Lux's long range poke, you can play extremely safe and stack this item without too much fear of losing them when you die. Early boots instead of Dark Seal can help you with dodging skill shots. Your first major buy is Ludens Echo. AP, mana, ability haste, and a burst passive provides Lux with everything she needs to one-shot squishies, chunk enemies with poke, and easily wave clear. The movement speed is a nice bonus to kite and position in fights. A quick mention for the other 2 mythic options, Leandries and Crown of the Shattered Queen. Leandries is great for its HP based damage against tanky opponents, but as Lux, you want to focus on aiming for the squishy champs early on, and Ludens provides you more burst. You'll be able to buy some tank trading legendary items later on anyway. As for the Crown of Shattered Queen, it provides safety against burst threats, but you'll lose significant amount of damage. You can actually do a lot of damage with Lux from safe range, plus we can purchase some safe legendary items to make up for any threats. Sorcery boots are the second best tier boots, not only for the magic pen, but for the important movement speed on an immobile champ like Lux. You can even get these earlier, after your Lost Chapter for example. Some rare cases where movement is high priority, or you just have enough gold to finish these boots, they'll still provide great combat stats. However, be very careful of your mana usage as you'll lack sustain. Mercury Treads are a safer option for the second tier boots. If long range poke, CC, burst, or perhaps the enemy has 3 or more AP champs, Mercury Treads are a solid option. Ninja Tabais against a full AD team is viable. Alright, legendary items. So with Ludens Echo and Sorcery boots, that's your 2 main items covered for pretty much 90% of games. The next 3 are still very important, but depending on how your game turns out, they should be purchased accordingly. A Zhonya's Hourglass is the safest second major buy, with the important invulnerability active, as well as the armor and AP stats. Great against big threats like Zed or Talon. If you need this urgently, you can rush it, purchasing the Seeker's Arm Guard first to resist AD damage, and you'll stack it up while laning for extra stats. Another option for your second major buy is Shadow Flame, a well-rounded item that has AP, HP, and magic penetration. The final second major buy option is Rabadon's Death Cap. Pretty much the ultimate AP item, not only increasing your burst and poke, but also your shield strength on W. Again, you can purchase these 3 items in any order, but you want to get them all eventually. Now a quick mention with Horizon Focus and Shadow Flame, as they are quite similar in stats and price. Horizon has a little more HP and some ability haste, while Shadow Flame has magic penetration. I would say if you need to play really safe and there are more threats, take Horizon Focus, as it has more HP and deals more damage when you deal damage further away. Otherwise stick to Shadow Flame in all other cases. Generally, Magi Soulstealer is a pretty risky item, with the potential to stack AP at the cost of losing 10 stacks per death. On a safe champion like Lux, this becomes a pretty reliable buy, especially if you have 6 or more stacks on your Dark Seal already. Just be aware that enemies will start to target you more often when they see your Magi stacked up, so you'll have to adjust your playstyle to be even safer. If the enemy team is building MR, Void Staff will be necessary. Even rush it as your 4th item if you have to. A defensive option is Banshee's Veil. If there is CC threat you're worried about, this could save you, as well as some nice MR for some extra tankiness. A utility option is Morellonomicon, a stat-filled item that has AP and HP, and a big counter to healing comps with the Grievous Wound passive. Remember, you only really need this if your support doesn't have Chemtech Putrefier and you desperately need to counter healing. Demonic Embrace can be viable against heavy HP stacked teams, helping you deal extra percentage HP damage over time. Best if you've already bought items with HP, as it converts that bonus HP into AP. Lichbane isn't horrible, but you should be playing against some team comps where you're able to activate the extra damage from your empowered autos. It's also great to take towers fast, especially if you already have plenty of AP, this scales quite nicely. I also want to mention some support items that you can buy as a carry mid, if the circumstances are correct. This strategy is a last resort. Remember, your only way to provide buffs is through your W shield. These items are cheaper and a great budget buy and still be useful, perhaps in a situation when you've fallen behind, enemies are stacked with MR, and you have 1 or more players hard carrying you. Chemtech Purifier, just make sure your support doesn't have this already. Ardent Sensor if you have auto attack based champions carrying you. Staff of Flowing Water if you have ability based champions carrying you. Again, I don't recommend these in 99% of games, but it is viable for those rare cases. As for shards, pick up 2 adaptive shards for AP, then pick armor or MR based on your laner. Summoner spells. Flash is the first summoner, offers both offensive and defensive options, which is necessary for any mobile champ like Lux. There are quite a few second options depending on your lane matchup or enemy team comps. The most common defensive summoner is Barrier. This will help you survive burst against tough matchups, especially assassins. With Barrier and your W shield, you can bait plenty of enemies under tower. Heal is viable, but it will be hard countered by laners that take Ignite. It can heal a teammate in a 2v2 skirmish early on or later in fights, as well as provide a quick movement speed boost. Ignite is slightly more powerful than heal. It's a great option if you aim to kill or pressure your laner in easier matchups. TP might be necessary against tougher poke lanes where you'll need to back early. Being able to TP back will allow you to keep up in CS and experience. Cleanse is important for hard CC threats like Lissandra or Sejuani ults. Exhaust is the least popular. It's okay against champs like Zed and Yasuo anytime they try to all-in you. However, champs usually take Ignite, and since it does true damage, Exhaust has no effect. Barrier seems to be the safest overall, and is 30 cents less cooldown than Exhaust, and 60 seconds lower than Heal. Interactions. Before we go over the juicy combos, let's quickly mention the importance of timing her abilities. Her E slow can be used to make Q land easier, so be ready to aim Q to the side enemies start walking out from your E radius. Landing Q is the hardest, since it's a really skinny skill shot with a decent travel time, but if you land it, it will guarantee damage from your E and your ultimate. Remember to use Fog of War or simply wait in a brush to increase your chances. Basic ability combos. Instant E pop. E then E. This will instantly proc the damage from E when it reaches the location area. Don't do it too fast or it won't work. You have to wait until the channel bar is full, which is like a quarter of a second, then second tap. Spamming E the whole time works, especially if the enemy is close or right on top of you. Quick proc passive number 1. Q auto attack. Q then auto attack to proc the passive damage. Quick passive proc number 2. E auto attack E. You can activate the second part of E while your auto attack is traveling. You can even use the instant pop E and immediately auto attack. So EE auto attack is just as good if you're already in auto attack range. Optimal trade combo. Q, E, auto attack, E, auto attack. And then you want to hit shield whenever. If you hit a Q first, follow up with E auto attack, E auto attack. The 2 autos will allow you to proc 2 passive stacks. They'll be rooted, so only proc your second E once you have auto attacked once. You should use shield early, later on, or not at all, depending on your situation. since you'll have to get close to auto, and most enemies can still throw out abilities and auto attacks while they are rooted. Ult combos. Full optimal combo. Q, auto attack, double E, ult, auto. You'll get 3 procs from your passive, but you'll only need to auto twice, since your ult not only procs the Illumination stack, it also marks the enemy. You'll need to get close for 2 autos, so be cautious with champs that are a threat as they can turn on you. Safe long range combo. Q, E, ultimate, E. You deal damage from all your abilities from a safe range, but you'll only proc 1 stack from your passive with your ultimate. Keep in mind you have potential to deal all this damage to 2 or more targets. The reason you want to second tap E last is because of its travel time. Quick E ultimate. Instant pop E ultimate. Quick combo for lots of damage. This can be used to steal epic monsters or you need to quickly react. Hard to escape combo. Q, E, ultimate, auto attack, E, auto attack. This combo will make it hard for enemies to escape after your initial burst. After your ultimate, you can go for a few autos since they'll be slowed, and then E as soon as they're about to leave the slow area. If they use flash, you will miss the second damage from E. This is only best against enemies who are likely to run away, otherwise they could turn on you. Flash combos. Q flash. Q then immediately flash for an extended Q range and a quicker cast. This is very risky to use your flash aggressively when playing someone like Lux, so use it wisely. Best used when making a pick that can really turn a game. Item combos. Zhonya combo. Q, E, ultimate, Zhonyas. Basically a safe long range combo with Zhonyas at the end. You want to get out all your damage and then use the Zhonya active for safety. Best if you get caught out and want to dish out damage quickly. Hopefully your team is close by and you'll be safe out of Zhonyas. And just for some clarity, you can't activate the second E while in Zhonyas. Unique combos. Kiting. Lux has great potential to kite with her abilities when enemies decide to chase you. These aren't really combos, but great defensive strategies when you need to escape some tough situations. A kiting combo example, Q and E. You want to land Q, which is generally much easier when enemies are chasing you, then place E right on the edge. The enemies will be forced to either walk through the entire area of E, being slowed the whole time, or simply retreat and stop chasing. Even if they try and walk around your skill shot, they'll be wasting time. If they keep chasing, just keep repeating this combo. Early game laning phase. In most matchups, you'll want to play safe and focus on farming. Try to poke and last hit minions with your E if your enemy laner pushes hard. Ideally, you want to balance the wave so it's closer to your tower. If you push the wave and freeze it closer to the enemy's tower, you risk getting ganked. Even if you get pushed in really hard into your tower, your passive makes it easier to last hit minions. You'll have to manage your mana carefully because of E's high mana cost early on, so even using Q to get some minions under tower may be beneficial. You can go for hard trades if you ever land your Q. Whether you can walk up to the enemy and proc your auto passive will depend on your laner. Zoning is also an option. Throwing out your E as your laner goes for a cannon, they'll either have to miss the cannon to avoid taking damage, or take the cannon and sacrifice their HP. Most of the time you won't be able to one-shot your enemy early on, especially if you've taken defensive summoners, so simply focus on poking a laner to low HP and set up your jungler for a kill. Your CC, damage, and ability to bait will make this optimal. You have amazing bait potential if enemies ever decide to go all in under your tower. You'll usually take defensive summoners plus a shield plus CC, which is great to prolong your life and bait enemies under your tower. You can also take blues without taking any damage later on if your jungler's okay with it, by kiting, shading your CC, and applying your W shield. Just be careful not to miss out on too much CC or you'll end up losing golden experience. Roaming is another option. Your ult has long range, so be ready to use it on any low HP enemy champions at bot, top, or even in the jungle. If you see a fight break out, using this to help your team with some damage is also an option. If it's safe enough to roam through river, your large AoE and CC allows for effective ganks, so take this chance when your wave is pushed or the enemy has backed. If you ever predict or see your enemy laner go for a roam, focus on pushing your wave in and pinging your teammates. Depending on the situation, sometimes it's best to follow the roam or simply push and try and get some tower platings. Without vision in river, it's extremely risky for Lux to simply walk through river against high threat laners. Hopefully, if your team doesn't die to roams and you push a few waves or take one or more tower platings, you'll be ahead in gold and experience. Mid to late as well as team fighting. Grouping is Lux's best chance to shine. Play around your strongest teammates, constantly wave clear to protect towers, and keep up in CS to ensure you have gold to purchase important items. Before a team fight starts, use your spells, especially your Q and E, to poke enemies. Landing Q on an important target will usually encourage one of your teammates to go for an engage. You want to position as safely as possible. Watch out for enemies that can one-shot you or hard CC. It's a simple concept, but as Lux, you want to spam your abilities on the most targets possible, while staying far back and shielding your teammates. You should also focus on providing peel for your ADC or any other important allies using the CC from Q and E plus shield from W. Your ultimate does plenty of AoE damage, so use it when enemies are bunched up in tight areas, or follow it up whenever your teammates use their CC for guaranteed damage. Sniping low HP enemies is also ideal. And of course, since you do so much damage, you should always look out for squishy enemies, especially the ADC or mid, aiming to one-shot combo them. Even placing an E in a tight area of the jungle and leaving it there will force enemy squishies to either retreat or walk through it and take damage. Apart from excelling in teamfights, Lux is great for making picks. Landing your Q mid to late on a target will usually result in a kill for your team. Make sure to purchase control wards and generally help with warding. Use your E to scout brushes throughout the entire game, even if it's to help your support ward areas close to objectives. As much potential as you have to one-shot squishies, you can offer a ton of utility and become a great teammate. I'm going to use some old footage for this section, but don't worry, as most of it still applies to laning.
Easy matchups. Azir, poke matchup. Level 1, poke him with E as he only has his soldier to trade back and you can just walk out of its range. Poke with E throughout the lane as you outrange him. If he ever wastes Q, you can go for hard trades. Shield yourself before you go in to proc your passive. After 6, respect his ability to dash in and ult you backwards, especially if you don't have flash. Brand, you outrange him. Just watch out for his Q stun if you've already been hit by one of his abilities. Your shield can negate his burn passive. Don't stand next to Blaze minions as his E will spread to you. At 6, if you fight him, don't stand close to minions for his ult to bounce. Diana, harass her pre-6, making sure you weave in autos. Her only threat is her cube for poke, and her W shield to negate some of your damage. You can take Corrupting Potion and Ignite if you really want to apply pressure early on and go for a kill. At 6, you want to respect her all in, so never get in her Q range and just poke her from afar. Take Barrier and be ready to bait her under tower if she ever decides to all in you. Karthus, you outrange him. His Qs are relatively easy to dodge. Watch out for his W wall as it's usually followed up by a gank and will make his Qs easier to hit. Use your shield while you're on top of him to negate his E damage over time. If he ever ults, use your shield early so you can activate the second part of your shield to negate his damage. Also, try to shield your teammates when he ults. Go for combos if you ever land a Q binding. Kayle, harass her pre-6, go for trade combos and weave in autos to proc your passive damage. Her Q is a slow, but the animation telegraphs it's coming, so try to sidestep it. Just poke her down and she'll have a hard time farming. At 6, she can resist your burst, so just focus on poking her down. Malzahar, harass him with your poke and auto attack to proc your passive. If he ever E space A's on you, just use your shield to negate his damage and he will struggle to push the wave. If he uses his E on minions, then harass him. Watch out for your minions that have space aids on them when they're low HP or they'll spread to you. Kill his minions to slow down his push. Watch out for his Q silent skill shot. At level 6, respect his flash R as it's usually followed up by a gank. Nico, you outrange her. Don't stay behind minions or she'll hit a fast pace E route and follow it up with her Q triple damage. She can be deceptive with W clone and her transform ability, so always be aware. Focus on long range poke and play aggressive if she misses her abilities. At 6, she can all in you while she's invis, so keep your distance, especially if you don't have flash. Focus on poke and go for combos if you land the Q. Twisted Fate, poke him with your range. Don't let him get close for his pick a card, especially his yellow stun card, since he'll follow it up with Q damage. Go aggressive when his pick a card is down for a few seconds. At 6, he becomes harder to deal with since he can ult bot or top. Try to ward behind river walls and ping teammates when he's 6 and you predict he's trying to teleport with his ult. Veigar, poke him with your range. He will likely focus on farming to stack his Q AP. Respect his E stun area as he can land abilities easier or it might be followed up by a gank. He has the potential to one-shot you with his full combo, but if you take cleanse it will be hard for him to land his Q and W, and therefore he can't all in you. Don't ever stay below 40% HP as he can just flash and R you. Stopwatch or Zhonya's can cancel his ult. Vel'Koz, poke matchup. Your E is slightly easier to hit from range than his abilities. His Q is the trickiest as he can activate it earlier and angle it around minions. Don't let him get 3 stacks from his passive, which will chunk you for true damage. Keep your distance as his knock-up followed by his other abilities will seriously chunk your HP. At 6, barrier or heal can save you if he ever ults or combos you. Victor, poke with Q and E. He will likely win hard trades since his Q has a shield and plenty of damage from his E. At 6, as long as you keep your distance, he can't kill you with his all-in burst. When he upgrades his E laser, he pushes far, so it will likely turn into a farm lane. Ziggs, poke him from range with Q and E. Don't stand close to minions or he can easily land Q splash damage. Otherwise his Qs are easy to dodge. Respect getting too close to him as his E minefield will zone you and you'll take plenty of damage if you have to walk through it. His W satchel can also displace you, so be careful. At 6, if he ever ults you, just shield instantly and try to get your strongest second shield to tank the damage. The middle of his ultimate does more. Medium matchups. Annie. Easy pre-6, but her E-shield can negate a lot of your poke. You can go for harder trades if her stun is down, which is activated when she has 4 full bars under her HP bar. At level 6, you need to respect her all-in, especially if she has flash to close distance. Take cleanse to escape her stun and ignite, or barrier to negate some of her burst. Your Q can hit 2 targets, so she can't use Tibbers to block it. Shield yourself if Tibbers is on top of you. Ahri, you have a range advantage pre-6, just be careful walking up to proc your auto passive as she can charm and Q you easily. If she ever wastes these, you can go aggressive. At level 6, her mobility makes it harder. You should try to land Q right after she uses dashes as there will be 1 second before she can dash again. Just play safe, especially if you don't have flash, and focus on farming and poking her. Akali, pre-6 she will struggle to be a threat. Poke her when you can and respect her Q ability, but it's very low range. When she's in Shroud, stay back, harass her while it's down. She can dash to you with E, but if you're behind minions, she can't land it. At level 6, she's a threat since her first dash can stun you and her second does missing HP damage. Anivia, poke her with Q and E. Her Q is a slow moving AoE that can stun, but it's easy to dodge if you keep your distance. A good Anivia will try to wall you into it. If she hits it, she will follow up with E damage. She's hard to kill with her egg passive as you won't have the mana or AP damage early on unless your jungler comes. At level 6, stay back as she can R and wall you into her AoE damage over time and combo you. This will likely turn into a farm lane as she pushes really fast. Aurelion Sol. Most A-Souls just push hard with their W, forcing you to counter push using your mana from E. Hitting skill shots can be difficult since he has quite a bit of movement speed, especially when his Q is activated. His main pressure will come from roaming once he has push, so ward up and ping teammates when you predict he's going for a gank. Hard to walk up to him to order him as his empowered W styles will outrange you and he will then outtrade you. At level 6 his R is similar to your ult, so don't let him poke you down. This can turn into a hard lane if you don't have any jungle pressure to punish his very aggressive style. Cassiopeia, respect her Q. If she lands it, she will gain movement speed and follow up with E spam. You can use a shield to negate poison damage. If she runs straight at you, it will be easier to land your Q and follow up with E, but don't ever go for auto passive proc unless she's At 6, if you ever face her, she can ult stun you, so be ready to turn away. However, she's a huge threat, so just stay back in general and focus on farming and poke. Echo, his Q is his main form of wave clear and poke. Even when you get hit with the first Q, dodge the second return Q, which does more damage. Watch out when he goes off map, since he might be charging his W, which will slow and then stun you if he's in the area and shield himself. His E dash, which is 2 dashes, makes it hard to land abilities. Just keep your distance and he can't really kill you. Aim to poke and farm. Very hard to kill him after 6, since he can just ult your burst combo and regain HP. Kassadin, he has a passive and Q shield to negate a lot of your damage, but pre-6 you should try to bully him and proc your passive when you can. Take Corrupting Potion and Ignite if you really want to apply pressure. Watch out for his 6 stacks from his E, since it's another ability he can use to poke you with. After 6, respect his R, Void, Rift, Blink, and just focus on farming and poking. He may look to roam if you play too passive, so just warn your teammates by warding and pinging them. Katarina, stay out of her dagger area. Her only form of poke is Q, so don't let her poke you down. Her E dash resets if she uses her daggers, which drops from Q and W, so if she ever wastes them on you or minions, that is the best time to go aggressive. After 6, stay back. She can burst you, so take barrier to negate some damage and shield yourself. Focus on poke and wave clearing quickly to force her to stay mid, or she'll look to roam. Lysandra, you outrange her, so aim to poke when you can. She pushes hard with Q, so don't stay behind minions or she'll hit you with splash damage. Careful when she uses her E dash as she can appear next to you, root you, and it might be followed up by a gank. You can still use abilities while she's rooted you, so turn on her if she wastes it. At level 6, just respect her all-in potential. Farm and poke from range. You can get cleanse to counter her ult, and perhaps if there's other CCs on the enemy team that you're worried about. Orianna, probably the most even matchup. You both have good poke, CC, shield, and strong auto trades. Whoever hits the most skill shots and shields at the right time will win this lane. Try to farm, but poke when there's a good chance. At level 6, she can be a threat if she uses her ult to displace you, and then her jungler follows up, so just play safe, focusing on farming and poking. Rise, he has to get close to combo you, but he can use his Q and E on minions to get splash damage on you. Use your range to poke him safely. Go for trades if he wastes his abilities. At level 6, his threat doesn't really change if you play close or around your tower, but if you position in risky areas, he can ult teleport with a jungler and flank you from behind. He can also flash W snare you, especially if his jungler is ganking. Barrier will negate a lot of his all-in burst, and Cleanse will save you from his flash W snare, or if the enemies have more CC. Syndra, you can bully her level 1 with E and an auto. After that, respect her Q balls. Don't stand behind her balls when she's directly behind them, or she'll E stun you and follow up with a combo. She can definitely one-shot you after 6 with a full combo, so play safe, farm and poke. Barrier is a safe summoner to negate a lot of her burst. You can Zhonya's her ult. Banshees is another great defensive item, and so is Merc Treads. Vladimir, you can safely poke him and farm most of the time, since his abilities have low range. However, he will likely heal a lot of your poke with his Q. Don't ever let him get his 2 stacked Q on you, as it has increased damage and healing. He can W pull to negate your burst unless you hit him with Q first. At level 6, respect his all-in, so just play safe, poke, and farm. Morello's is a good item to rush after Ludens. You can take Ignite and Corrupting Potion if you want to apply heavy pressure early on. Hard lanes. Fizz. You should look to pressure him hard before level 3 with autos. After that, he can dodge most of your skill shots with his Q dash through minions or on you, and his E tricks the jump. He can burst you if you have about 80% HP. The only time you should go in for a hard trade combo is when his Trickster is down, since it has a long cooldown. At level 6, he becomes a bigger threat. If he hits his long range ult, he can one-shot you. Rushing Zhonya's can negate his burst, and Banshees is also a solid choice later on. Play extremely safe, wave clear and poke. LeBlanc. You can out-trade her level 1 with E and auto, but she pretty much has the advantage after that. Keep your distance from her Q and then W combo, but it could give you a chance to land your Q if you align yourself with her and her W return spot. Be extremely careful of their jungler, as LeBlanc can W dash in, E chain you, allowing the enemy jungler to finish you off. The key to surviving is pushing, as you'll either force LeBlanc to use her spells on minions or force her into tower to lose some gold. Try to land abilities from safe range. At level 6, she becomes a bigger threat. Barrier is the safest option, and Cleanse can also be viable if you need it for other enemy CC. Merc Treads are also a solid choice early. Sylas. His Q poke, W heal, and E dashes make him a tough matchup. However, he is melee, so auto whenever you can. Be especially careful about his second part chain dash from E, as once he's close to you, this is where all his damage comes from. If he can't get close to you, you should win this lane. At level 6, he can copy your ult, so don't get too low or he'll snipe you. And watch out for any other threatening ults he gets by checking to see which ult he has stolen next to his HP bar. Morello's after Ludens can decrease his healing from W. Talon. Don't get hit by his second return W, as he can follow up with Q and auto for insane early damage. He can kill you with this even if you have around 80 to 90% HP. Punish him with abilities and autos anytime they are down. His other main threat comes from constantly roaming with his E wall jumps. Ward up and ping teammates when you predict he will roam. At level 6, respect his massive burst potential. Rush Seeker's arm guard and get Zhonya's if he becomes a huge threat. Xerath, one of the few champs to outrange you. Take MR shards and build some MR early, even rush Merc Treads for the movement speed as well as the tenacity. If you stand behind minions, he can use abilities to push and poke you. Try to poke him when you can, as you'll rarely get the chance to auto. Be especially careful of his E stun, as he'll follow up with his combo, but you can use minions to body block it. At level 6, if he ever decides to ult you, just shield yourself and move in random directions, but this obviously depends on how good the Xerath is, otherwise it's pretty easy. Yasuo, his W wind wall and E dash through minions makes it extremely difficult to land poke. Your ult can go through his wind wall, so keep this in mind. If you want to bait his wind wall, use Q, as it costs less mana. When it's down, that is your time to go for trades, but you must still respect his mobility and damage. At level 6, if the enemy jungler, top laner or support has some displacement CC, play extremely cautious, as they can gank you and Yasuo will follow up with his ult. Zed, you should bully him until level 3. After that, respect his W shadow trade and go for trades when it's down. Stand behind minions so his Q damage is reduced. At level 6, he can all in you, so never let him get too close. He will always appear on the opposite side when he has ulted you, which means you can get a free Q if you time it correctly. Use your shield, exhaust or barrier to negate his all-in potential. You want to exhaust right at the beginning of his combo after he ults. Rush Seeker's arm guard. If he's a huge threat, you can go straight into Zhonya, so perfect timing should be taken. Play safe, wave clear and poke when you can. He's also a huge roam threat, so be ready to ping teammates if he's missing. Zoe, don't stand too close to minions or she'll land her Q splash damage. When she's in Fog of War, she might be next to a wall to throw out her long range E, or charging her Q as it does more damage with distance. Watch for her W spells, which is displayed next to her HP bar, as she'll likely use them in the next trade. Cleanse is great for this matchup, as it will negate the damage from the second part of her E and help you dodge the incoming Q. At level 6, she blinks with her ult, but you have a chance to land a guaranteed Q since you know where she'll return, so go for it when it's safe and follow it up with your combo. Focus on poking and wave clearing from a safe distance, and ward river brushes so she can't hit you with long range E's. Let's go over strengths and weaknesses so you'll know when it's best to pick LUX.
I'll also cover some ways to counter weaknesses. Strengths. Safe range. All her skills have incredible range. You'll get rewarded by playing extremely passive on Lux. Even if you're low HP, you can still stay far back, shielding your teammates, throwing out Q and E for damage, and clean up fights with R-snipes on low HP enemies. One of the safest champions in the game. Sieging. With great poke, shielding, and CC, Lux is effective at grouping and sieging towers with your team, and generally great at poking pre and post teamfight in those dangerous areas in the jungle. Teamfighting. Massive AoE, solid CC, and again potential to shield multiple teammates makes Lux a great pick for teamfights. Team comps. She can fit into almost any team comp. First picking her can be an issue since she has some hard counters, but you can always choose to play extremely safe, taking defensive summoners and purchasing any defensive items. Easy and fun to play. Once you've learnt her main trait and full combo, her only difficulty will come from landing skill shots. Her sniping plus huge burst mid to late makes her extremely rewarding and fun to play. Even if you don't plan on maining her, she's great to have in your champ pool when you need an AP mage. Weaknesses. Immobile. Without flash, you'll be an easy target for assassins or any other threatening champions. You should play extremely passive when your flash is down and look to purchase items that counter burst or long range CC like Zhonya's or Banshees. Squishy. As with most mages, you're extremely squishy. Position badly at any time throughout the game and you'll be punished. Look to purchase pinks for vision control and always use your E to check brushes. Not only will it help you stay alive, you can catch out enemies with your abilities. Again, items like Zhonya's and Banshees are your best friends. High mana costs. This is mainly an issue early game as spamming abilities in lane will make you go oom. Try to aim for both harass and wave clear if you can, making double use of the mana. Mana flow ring can help in lanes where you'll be pushed in hard. Once you get Lost Chapter, you'll have an easier time controlling your mana. Skill shot reliant. Missing skill shots in an important teamfight will make you completely useless. Improving this aspect will come down to practice and timing. Wait for mobile champs to use their dashes or blinks, and wait for your teammates to use their reliable CC if they have some, as you'll have a much higher chance to land abilities. Tanks. These champions require consistent damage, and Lux is all about burst. If there's an unlikely situation when you're up against 4 or more tanks on the enemy team, Lux becomes a suboptimal pick. Pick up Leandries and focus on magic pen items mentioned in the build section. Support Lux. This guide mostly focused on mid lane Lux, but she can be just as viable as support if you enjoy playing her and have some experience. Most of this info in this guide still applies to support Lux. I won't be covering specific matchups as there's too many, but here is a summary. She's best against immobile ADCs as it's harder to dodge skill shots, and if your team needs some AP, CC, and shields. She has a tough time against tank bot laners with gap closing abilities like Alistar or Leona, as she's quite immobile and squishy. She also struggles against mobile ADCs that can dodge her abilities. She may struggle against healing supports who will eventually regen HP with their abilities from your poke, but you always have the potential to all-in them if you hit a binding and take ignite. If you're up against another poke support, it will come down to whoever lands the most skill shots, and if you can shield some of their damage. Summon Aerie is slightly more viable as support Lux, since you'll be able to use the shield part of Aerie and you can do more damage with your autos with Aerie in those bot lane trades, especially against some melee supports. Arcane Comet is still probably the best in most situations. You want to take Mana Flow, Ring, Transcendence, and Scorch. Scorch is great to apply way more pressure in bot lane rather than waiting to scale with Gathering Storm. There are a few second path options. From Precision, take Presence of Mind and Coup de Craft for a more aggressive role. From Inspiration, Cosmic Insight and Biscuit Delivery. Perfect Timing and Magical Footwear are also viable. From Resolve, you can take Bone Plating to resist poke and negate damage in trades, and Revitalize for some extra shield strength and heals, although these are not optimal. For Shards, take 2 AP and 1 Armor Shard most lanes, or MI if they have double AP bot. Your passive should be abused when it's safe to auto attack. Your Q Binding offers great lockdown and peel. Your W Shield can negate a lot of damage from trades, so try to use them both on you and your ADC. E is great for poke, just be careful as you may steal farm. Not only will your ADC miss gold, it may push the wave. and your ultimate is perfect for finishing or trying to aim for 2 targets for optimal damage whenever it's best. If you're going for a full AP damage build, which is recommended, you want to build Ludens for your first major items for the AP, ability haste, and mana to spam abilities. Remember to get your support items stacked so you can start warding. Auto attack towers when you can. Pick up Oracle Lens when you've upgraded your Spell Thief's Edge into Frostfang at 500 stacks. If you're going for more of a utility build, and your team has plenty of damage already, Ardent Sensor, Staff of Flowing Water, or Chemtech Putrefier are great first options. Remember, only your W provides these buffs. Apart from Flash, take Ignite if you want to pressure your lane and have an aggressive ADC like Draven or Lucian. Great to counter heal. Barrier is viable in all other cases. Take Exhaust against big threats and if you have a passive ADC that wants to farm. Exhaust will be more effective later on. Heal is okay to take, just make sure your ADC takes another summoner spell, or you risk taking double heal, which isn't optimal. So that's it for this Lux guide. If it helped you at all, or you simply enjoyed it, give it a like. I always have fun playing Lux. There's something very relaxing about her playstyle. If you want an ultimate guide on your favorite champ, let me know in the comments, as well as any other feedback. Of course, subscribe if you haven't already for more content. I'm Zoose and I'll see you in the next video.